How much stronger did fan-favorite Espada, Grimmjow Jaggerjax become in the Can't Fear Your Own World novels? Furthermore, did Grimmjow ever become a Vasto Lorde? It seems most of the requests that I get are centered on Grimmjow's power level, but I'll thoroughly address other concepts such as a potential Segunda Etapa for Grimmjow and others. And what if Grimmjow had a rematch with Ichigo now? Could he actually put up a fight? I'll be answering all of these questions here today. If you appreciate this kind of content, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you're following my TikTok account, this is the name of my YouTube channel. I'll also be addressing your other questions throughout the video. Now, some of these are up for interpretation, but I'll try to address your questions as much as possible. Was Grimmjow a Vasto Lorde? Vasto Lordes are the highest level of the Menos class of Hollows, the intermediate stage being Adhuchas and the lowest stage being the Gillian. As they ascend from Gillian to Adhuchas, then Vasto Lorde, Hollows become smaller. Vasto Lordes are distinctly powerful because they contain the spiritual pressures of several 100,000 Menos Grandes. That's like condensing the spiritual pressures of several 100,000 Shaolongs inside a body, or a mix of Gillians, Adhuchas, and other Vasto Lordes, totally numbering up to several 100,000. Basically, if the average Menos had a power level of 1, a Vasto Lorde would have a power level of over 200,000. So Captain Itsugaya might have exaggerated a bit, but it does make sense overall. But did the legendary blue-haired Espada achieve the level of Vasto Lorde, as his past companions Xiaolong and the others hoped that he would? Well, in Can't Fear Your Own World, Grimmjow, Haribel, and Neliel are depicted as Vasto Lorde class Arrancars. Whether you choose many or several, it was referring to those three, ranking them in the same Arrancar class. And for those who are curious, yes, most of the Espadas were Vasto Lorde. Just make sure you guys like and subscribe, as I'll be giving out more information on the Espadas and Arrancars in general with upcoming videos. After becoming an Espada, Grimmjow was ranked at number 6 in Aizen's army. At this point in the story, Grimmjow would be stronger than Soul Society arc Byakuya. This is because Ichigo was already comparable to Byakuya's speed in Shikai form, but when its Bankai converts its power into speed, he immediately speed blitzes Byakuya in terms of both reaction and perception. And the high-speed Senbon Zakura Kageyoshi was cut down by Ichigo's speed and power. And later, Byakuya could fight back because Ichigo's speed was decreasing. And a partial holification was able to crush Byakuya's Senkei blade with its bare hands. And to a base Grimmjow, Ichigo's Bankai speed was merely average, with Grimmjow's skin being able to literally grab onto Ichigo's Bankai blade. And the Resurrection Grimmjow was able to fight a stronger Ichigo using holified Bankai. And when Aizen spoke to Asashiro in the Mugen, he explained that Byakuya Kuchiki was stronger in the Arrancar arc because he trained hard. Therefore, Byakuya's increased strength between arcs is not inconsistent. Moving on to the next point, could Grimmjow use Segunda Etapa? During the Weikomunda arc, the answer would be no, as Ulquiorra was the only one who could use Segunda Etapa. Also, if you guys want a long video like this for Ulquiorra, in which I answer all your questions, be sure to like and subscribe and let me know in the comment section. Now, despite Grimmjow not being able to use Segunda Etapa during the Weikomunda arc, it is possible for Grimmjow to reach Segunda Etapa through training, which hints that Resurrection 1 might not even be the true final form for the Espadas, and indicates that Grimmjow has immense potential. Next, how much stronger did Grimmjow become up to the 1000-Year Blood War arc and then up to the Can't Fear Your Own World novels? First of all, Grimmjow's power did increase because he beat down and consumed other Arrancars and Menos Grandes, which means Adhuchas, Gillians, and other Vasto Lordes, which increased his spirit energy. And he's clearly capable of using partial transformations in the 1000-Year Blood War. However, these panels would not make him Asuke Naklevar's equal, as Urahara was taking advantage of Grimmjow's full hollow essence in Resurrection, which is a Quincy's weakness. And Quincy's must actively maintain their bloat, either for attack or defense, with Grimmjow catching Askin off guard. And before I get into the Can't Fear Your Own World statements and feats, I should address this. So first of all, Can't Fear Your Own World is canon, as Kubo approves of the stories and he's a main information source, but depictions are left to the authors. And some aspects of the Can't Fear Your Own World scaling from my perspective are a bit odd, but it is still overall consistent if you use the main manga source as your reference point. In other words, you should use Kubo's own information and depictions used in the manga, as well as other information he gives through interviews and so on, as your main guide and reference point when reading these novels. That should help you justify anything you might find too inconsistent. Kubo's answers, manga scaling, and the 1000-Year Blood War anime should be your main source of scaling, and the novels simply build on that. So if a character is faster than light in the manga, but Mach 3 in the novels, the manga would be the more authoritative source, as the manga is Kubo's own portrayal. But key concepts, settings, and the revelation of new information should flow directly from Kubo himself. For example, the revelation of things like Shuhei's Bankai. So yes, it's canon and the scaling is overall consistent, but in some areas you have to apply extra context and go back to Kubo's own work as reference. Grimmjow had stepped into the middle of a battle between Quincy's and Fullbringers in the Rukongai. In base form, he could rip through boulders thrown by Minion as his super strength and lightning bolts tossed by Candice Catnips. Now these two could not use their Volston dish since Yuha stole it, but they could still use their base Quincy powers. Being hit by a boulder might not be the same as being directly struck since her spirit body would be more dense, but it's the same girl whose base form can hoist mountain-sized hollows. And ripping through Candice's lightning bolts imply that Grimmjow can still fight at a 1000-year Blood War captain level. Following this, he would go on to challenge Ginjo in his regular state and Tsukishima, and this is perhaps one of those areas that challenges readers a lot. For example, Grimmjow is described as fast by Ginjo, who compared him to a Soul Reaper who is skilled in Shunpo but could still follow him with his eyes. But then Ikone was able to fight Grimmjow, Neliel, and Haribel at speeds comparable to fake Karakura Town Haribel and Toshiro. And as intriguing as this might sound, Ginjo didn't seem too accustomed to fighting users of Sonido, as the Sonido's trait, which allows the user to evade spiritual sensing, placed Ginjo under holographic illusion. And while Grimmjow went on to evade a point-blank Getsuga Tenshu from Ginjo, the author added that this was likely due to a natural reflex built into Grimmjow from when he fought Ichigo. Now the novel does place a distinct difference between Grimmjow's attack power and his natural power level. The same way Espadas could fire off the Cero Oscuras in Resurrection form, which is 10 times stronger than their power level, or Getsuga Tensho, which surpasses Ichigo's own power level by taking his energy and amplifying it, to the extent that he can actually be burnt by Getsuga Tensho, which rivals his own. The same way Dragon Ball Z fighters can amplify their own ki and release attacks which surpass their own power levels, essentially by concentrating their energy. Grimmjow can use this method to fire off a Granray Zero, which has a comparable or higher reactor density than Ginjo's Getsuga Tensho. And since Ginjo copied Ichigo's powers, this was a Shikai Blast. And this Grimmjow was in its base form, which means that he can stack the Resurrection multiplier upon his Granray Zero. Rivaling a Bankai's multiplier, his Resurrection Granray Zero would likely be 5 to 10 times stronger than even that one. And then he has a Resurrection attack which surpasses even the Granray Zero, called Desgaron. Each claw of Desgaron contains more dense energy than a Granray Zero, and he can fire 10 of them at the same time. Ichigo had recovered and surpassed this old Shinigami power in Fullbring form, with his next transformation Fullbring Shikai and Bankai surpassing even that in terms of raw power. So generally speaking, any Espada should go bye-bye if they get hit by Grimmjow's Desgaron, just off the principle of the insane power difference. So Grimmjow should have the highest attack potency out of all of these Espadas. But there's more to the Desgaron, as I'll discuss later. And following the power sequence, you can see why Nova Grimmjow is truly the master of destruction. As it pertains to Grimmjow's regular attacks and power level, even after swallowing Grimmjow's Zero, Ikomiki Domoe made it clear that Grimmjow was not on the level of Vasto Lorde Baragan, which means that in terms of just power level, Grimmjow was beneath Baragan as a Vasto Lorde. And the final form Ikomiki Domoe, which fought Grimmjow and the other Arrancars, was compared to Baragan as a Vasto Lorde King. And with that level of spiritual pressure, when he diffuses Zero in multiple directions, which would make it weaker, it could still damage the Arrancars, including Grimmjow, through Haribel's shield. And Grimmjow does admit that he would lose to Baragan as an Espada, with the likelihood that Ikomiki Domoe, who rivaled Vasto Lorde Baragan's form, could take off Grimmjow's head with a single hit if he wasn't careful. And you might be forced to ask, what about Grimmjow's Desgaron attack power? Well, alongside its power, Giriko also mentioned that speed could overcome Desgaron. And even ignoring its power and experience, we know how fast and fluid Baragan's Respira can be. Compared to other Espadas, firstly, Kenpachi does confirm that Grimmjow is in fact beyond the Noitora's level, which elevates him beyond the rank of number 5. And Haribel believes that Neliel would be able to take care of Grimmjow, with Neliel adding that she would have to use everything in her power to do so. And in terms of battle power, Grimmjow is on par with Lupi in the novel. And note that Lupi is also enhanced through science, and can even fire 8 Granray Zeros simultaneously. And a fight to the death wouldn't necessarily guarantee that Grimmjow is on par with Haribel. It just means that they would fight until one of them dies. But in terms of general combat performance, Haribel, Neliel, and Grimmjow perform very similarly against Ikomiki Domoe. But since it's a general comparison, I would still rank Haribel higher. I don't see him defeating the likes of Basbi, who was able to rival Post-Royal Palace Renji up until his power was taken by Yuha, and Arrancar or Grimmjow would lose to any Captain Toshiro level and above. As for Chushikai Ichigo, if Grimmjow had a rematch, he wouldn't be able to lay a hand on Ichigo. The power gap is enormous, and if Grimmjow is struggling with people like Baragan, he would also lose to the Lost Agent arc Shikai and Bankai Ichigo. In a potential Hell arc, Grimmjow's dynamic with Neliel Nell and Haribel should be very similar to Canfire Ownworld. In fact, Neliel acts more like a disciplinary older sister. She even smacks him in the head when he tries to fight Ichibei. Furthermore, it seems Neliel sometimes tries to be a bit insulting, and they have kind of a quiet rivalry going on between them. On the other hand, Haribel does not bicker with Grimmjow as Neliel does, but she is aware of Grimmjow's instincts and tendencies, which pushes him to be somewhat suicidal, and because of that, she doesn't call herself the king of Hueco in his presence. Regarding their collective dynamic, they work as a team to protect Hueco for slightly different reasons. Nell and Haribel both care about the everyday runnings of Hueco, with Haribel seemingly taking on most of that on her shoulders. And Grimmjow is protecting Hueco alongside them because it's his stomping ground where he wants to defeat Ichigo. Grimmjow would pretty much fight anybody even if that person is clearly stronger than him. And in Canfire Ownworld, Zaraki still has a habit of limiting himself so he can have fun with his opponents. So even if he acted like Grimmjow was a rival, Zaraki who defeated Unohana would defeat this present Grimmjow. And so would Zaraki from the Spirits Are Forever With You given the massive power cliffs. And so would the Kenpachi who defeated Yami if he doesn't play around and let Grimmjow hit him with Descaron for giggles. That wouldn't be a very comfortable experience for Kenpachi. Grimmjow's fighting method is instinctive and animalistic. He manipulates his body like lightning, uses sneak attacks and very strong taijutsu or hand-to-hand combat, like a reflexive animalistic mixed martial artist. As for their combat prowess, Arrancars and such are natural combatants due to the conditions of Hueco. The Quincy's were recruiting Arrancar soldiers for this very reason. They were natural fighters and don't need to be trained. If you guys want other videos like this one, covering other characters like Espadas and so on, be sure to like and subscribe and ask in the comments section. Cheers.